Lunch break of day 23 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry, tranche 2, phase 2. We're listening to the third day of evidence of Bob Lambert. He's been questioned this morning about McLiable, about hunt sabbing, about meeting Ronnie Lee. The last section we've just had was a whole section about hunt sabbing, where he was really at pains to have to admit that in fact the hunts themselves were much more violent than the Hunt Saboteurs Association. It was really excruciating, incredibly excruciating. He spent a great deal of time talking about how provoking the hunt sabs were without really answering the question. I mean, all morning he has been doing, I think it's best summed up as a meal of a big slab of bullshit with a side order of word salad. The amount of ability to say absolutely nothing whilst using so many words is really, it's quite impressive, to be honest. Anyway, I'm joined with Ben. He was following the evidence just as closely as I was. What did you make of it, Ben?
I'm not sure you can say I was following particularly closely because, between all the ums and ahs, and you kind of filter them out, and then when he's actually saying words, it takes a little while for your brain to process that is actually saying something. And by which time he stopped saying something and you've missed it, so you have to look at the tweet. One thing I do remember of that particular exchange where he's being asked about who was the most violent, and he kind of said that the hunt, or particularly the terrier boys, were maybe more able to dish it out, better at violence, but not necessarily
more prepared for violence, was his words.
Yeah, horses, whips, cars to run you over with, all that kind of stuff. I felt a little bit slighted by the idea that somehow they were more proficient in handling themselves when it came to it. But he wouldn't say that the violence came from them. Just wouldn't really say that.
Right, yeah. Also, he was asked at length about his involvement, particularly at the beginning of the McLiable campaign. There was a whole bunch of questions about his involvement in producing the first leaflet. I'm guessing we're going to come back a lot more to that because it was later iterations of the leaflet which he had a bigger impact on. He was asked a whole bunch of questions about the way in which London Greenpeace were kind of connected to animal rights. We had this whole thing about the HSA. He went to HSA, the Hunt Saboteurs Association AGM. His report from that AGM claimed that all Hunt Saboteur Association activists were also Animal Liberation Front activists. This is something which he's really maintained, that there's really no difference in the animal rights movement between different aspects of the movement. There was a whole bunch of questions earlier on as well about how, him saying that even those people in support roles of the Animal Liberation Front were in fact activists who were taking part in criminal damage. This conflation, really, we've seen throughout all of his reporting, that the animal rights movement in general were in fact all the same as the ALF. Obviously there's a huge difference there, and the role of the support network of people who really, there's a lot of people who really don't want to do direct action or are a bit worried about getting involved in something which the police could view as criminal, who do a lot of the roles. In the eyes of Bob Lambert, all of those people are involved in criminality. I thought that was quite telling. What did you make of it?
Yeah, certainly when he was talking about the animal rights militia, it was like animal rights militia are the ALF are the Hunt Saboteurs. It's just there's no distinction, and I guess that's because the things that he were reporting on, like the Hunt Saboteurs Association AGM, in order to justify that, then it has to be more about putting forward motions and talking about subscriptions for your magazine or it's got to be domestic terrorism. So he has to bring in the animal rights militia, which it's quite a leap.
Yeah, he did it, particularly with the HSA. He was asked a bunch of questions about the Hunt Saboteurs Association. We were shown their rules, about their commitment to non-violence. He responded by talking about the Hunt Retribution Squad, which was a very small group of people who had done some hunt sabbing that had crossed the line away from the rules of the HSA. He did a lot of the sort of, I'm sure they're good people, both sides. A lot of his stuff has been referred to as Trumpian by other people. I certainly saw echoes of that in that section. We are on a lunch break now. It's not particularly long. I'd really like to get some lunch. Anything you want to add, Ben, before we sign off?
No, I'm going to get falafels.
Okay, thanks for joining us. I'll be live tweeting again this afternoon. I'll do some more those Instagram reaction videos in the break. I got involved more people this time. I think I'll try and do that more often. I hope that's more useful. There will be a Twitter Spaces at the end of the day. Ben wants to say something else?
You didn't talk about the breach.
Oh, there was a breach this morning. There wasn't a breach this morning. We were told there was a breach this morning. If you look at my tweets, I said I was asked to delete one of my tweets. I was then told that it was okay, I could undelete it, which isn't a thing. Thankfully, I'd saved the words and I was able to paste them in. But essentially, during this morning's questioning, when he was being questioned about why or had the anti-McDonald's campaign being something of special interest to the special branch before his deployment, and he said that yes, that while he was in C Squad, he was aware of this being an issue, and that his predecessor, who had been deployed, had given him first-hand information about the fact that there was a campaign against McDonald's, and that was of interest. We were led to believe that this was a breach, that somehow this had exposed somebody who shouldn't have been exposed. It turned out that this was not a breach, but it may be that there is another undercover officer who's been exposed by that, which we're hoping to look into and find out more about. Anything you want to add on that?
It was a breach for long enough for them to actually read out a new restriction order for it, only to almost immediately after you deleted your tweet, in fact, almost immediately say you can carry on talking about this stuff. That restriction order's finished. Okay, that was odd.
Yeah, this is a bit geeky, but the way in which that the inquiry responds to a breach now has changed in the last couple of days. Previously, we would have these long periods of silence when we would wait for Sir John Mitting to return, in which case he would read out the entirety of the new restriction order. Now we've got a situation where the person who reads out the restriction orders before the hearings start in the morning comes up within a few minutes and starts reading all the pro forma elements of the restriction order, what it means, what it's based on legally, what the penalty will be if you break it. And then by the time she's got through that, someone's handed her a piece of paper and given her 2 timestamps and says basically that this refers to all the time between these 2 timestamps. It was a 9-minute timestamp that they referred to. By the time we were informed of that, the 10 minutes had elapsed, so anything that related to it would have already been published. By the time John Mitting came in, which was only a few moments later, he said there was not a breach, anybody can report anything that was said. I think this new system is better because it means that we don't have the situation where the break for a breach is so incredibly long. It speeds that up. We saw that yesterday.
It would be like take out like 20 minutes or so, wouldn't it?
Exactly, only 20 minutes. And if you can compare that to what we saw during phase 1, where like Trevor Morris, we just had, we were waiting around for 30, 40 minutes each time there was a breach sometimes. This is a better system, but it does mean that we all have to listen to a restriction order, which then turns out not to be the case pretty quickly afterwards. But anything else you want to add?
No, falafels are waiting.
Okay, cheers for joining us. I'll see you all again this afternoon. Cheers.